Hey guy, tonight we are not going to march with legions or plot in the courts of kings. We are going to do something infinitely smaller, and yet, in its own way, infinitely grander. We're going to retreat from the world, into the deep, profound silence of a medieval monastery. Tonight, you are going to create a book, not with a printing press or a computer, but with a feather, some ink you make yourself, and the patient, painstaking labor of your own two hands. You are going to feel the chill of the stone walls, smell the beeswax from the single candle that lights your work, and learn the quiet rhythm of a life dedicated to a single, monumental task. Now, before we settle into the peaceful quiet of the scriptorium, a little reality check is in order. Life as a medieval monk was anything but a cozy retreat. Between the monotonous diet, the damp, stone-cold living quarters, and the ever-present threat of diseases for which there was no cure, your chances of surviving to see this book finished are, frankly, not great. You're far more likely to succumb to pneumonia or a nasty tooth infection than you are to write the final amen. But from the warmth and safety of your bed, you can enjoy the romance of the scribe's life without any of the actual suffering. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I always find it fascinating to see where this silence travels. V letter 1 EAD Y nairn. Hey B letter 1 EAD T Q U letter 1 EA1 T lairn. H letter 1 EA1 Den X U letter 1 ED1. NG Cho M letter 1 EDD letter 1 EA3. O Vasi letter 1 E9 THO letter 1 EA3. I my Diane Hay. Your world is one of bells, stone, and routine. You are Brother Thomas, a young monk in a windswept monastery perched on the coast of Northumbria in the High Middle Ages. Your life is a repeating, comforting cycle. The pre-dawn bell that calls you to prayer in the freezing chapel, the morning's work in the herb garden or tending to the chickens, the single, simple meal of the day, eaten in silence while another brother reads from the lives of the saints. Your monastery is a famous one. Like the great monastic houses of Ireland, it is a beacon of learning in a dark world, a place where the light of knowledge is kept safe. This is a mainstream historical fact. For centuries, these remote communities were the primary centers of book production in Europe, creating timeless masterpieces. Your life is quiet, anonymous, and unremarkable until today. Today, a novice interrupts your work weeding the vegetable patch and tells you that the abbot wishes to see you. Immediately, a summons from the abbot is a rare and terrifying thing. He is an old man, a figure of immense authority who seems more like a force of nature than a person. You clean the dirt from your hands and knees, your heart thumping, and make your way through the familiar cold corridors to his study, a part of the monastery you have never seen. The room is dark and smells of old wood and beeswax. The abbot is sitting at a heavy oak desk, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, his eyes sharp and clear. He watches you in silence as you enter and give a slight bow. The silence stretches on, a familiar tool of monastic discipline. He is studying you. Finally, he speaks. He tells you that a great patron of your abbey, a wealthy lord, has died. In his will, he left the monastery a vast sum of money, enough to support the community for a decade. But it was given for a single purpose, to fund the creation of a psalter, a complete book of the 150 Psalms of David, to be made for the glory of God and for the salvation of the patron's soul. The abbot pauses, letting the weight of this sink in. Then he says the words that will change your life forever. And I have chosen you, Brother Thomas, for this sacred task. You feel a wave of dizziness. You are young, only a few years past your novitiate. You've done some minor copying, repaired a few damaged pages. But this is the work of a master. The abbot continues, explaining that this will be your sole purpose at the abbey. You will be relieved of all other duties. You will work in a private cell off the main scriptorium. He estimates the work will take 17 years. It's the medieval equivalent of being assigned a project with a 2-decade deadline, and there are no promotions along the way. It is a dizzying mix of the highest honor and the most profound terror, and it raises a question that historians still argue about today. Were these magnificent, incredibly expensive books purely acts of devotion? Or were they also displays of power and prestige, a form of spiritual branding that declared the wealth, skill, and importance of the monastery that created them? Looking at the abbot, his face stern and pious, you suspect the answer is both. He warns you of the gravity of the task, the need for perfect dedication. He tells you that the book you create will be a sacred object, a vessel for the word of God. He even mentions, with a thin smile, that some scribes were known to write curses in the margins of their finished works, a quirky but common tidbit of scribal lore, warning that anyone who might steal or deface their life's work would be struck down by demons or suffer a terrible, painful death. It's a not-so-subtle reminder of the preciousness of the object you are about to create. He asks if you accept the commission, as if you have a choice. You bow your head and say that you do, your voice a squeak. He nods, a flicker of satisfaction in his old eyes, and dismisses you with a wave of his hand. You walk out of his study, your feet moving automatically through the familiar halls, but everything is different now. The monastery, your entire world, has been reoriented. Your life, once a quiet stream of repetitive days, now has a single, massive, terrifying, and glorious purpose. For the next 17 years, your world will shrink to the size of a parchment page, lit by a single candle. The morning after the abbot's commission, you wake before the prayer bell, your mind buzzing with a mixture of excitement and dread. Your life's work has begun. You imagine being led to a quiet, sunlit room, a holy place where you will immediately begin the sacred act of writing. You find, mistaken. The old monk in charge of the scriptorium, Brother Simeon, greets you after morning prayers, not with a book, but with a pair of thick leather apron. He leads you not to the library, but to a low stone building at the edge of the monastery grounds, downwind from the kitchens. The smell hits you from 20 paces away, a foul, chemical stench of decay and damp fur. This, he explains, is where your 17-year journey truly begins. This part is usually left out of the stories. Before you can write the word of God, you must first make the world on which it will be written. Your first task is to learn how to make parchment. Simeon leads you to a pile of sheepskins, delivered from the abbey's own flock. They are greasy, covered in filth and tufts of matted wool. This raw, smelly, very dead animal product, you are told, will be transformed into the pure, creamy pages of your psalter. The contrast between the profane material and the sacred purpose is the first lesson of your new life. Your initiation begins at the lime baths. You see several large wooden vats filled with a cloudy, milky white liquid. It's a caustic soup of slaked lime and water, and you are instructed to plunge the sheepskins into the murky depths. The stench is eye-watering, a smell that will cling to your robes and hair for weeks. This is the first, crucial stage of the process, a mainstream historical fact of parchment making. The lime bath will loosen the wool and dissolve the grease in the skin. Simeon calls it a purification. You think of it as a very aggressive, very smelly chemical peel. The skins will soak here for days, even weeks, depending on the thickness of the skin and the strength of the lime. When they are finally ready, you haul the slimy, dripping skins out of the vat. The wool now comes away easily, sloughing off in great, stinking handfuls. You then drape a skin over a large, curved wooden beam. Simeon hands you a special tool, a true piece of quirky medieval technology. It's a lunellum, a crescent-shaped knife with a handle in the middle. Your job is to scrape the skin, removing every last trace of hair from one side and any remaining bits of flesh and fat from the other. It is brutally hard work. You must apply just the right amount of pressure. Too little and you leave imperfections. Too much, and your knife can slice right through the delicate skin, ruining a future page and earning you a stern glare from Brother Simeon. Once a skin is scraped clean on both sides, it looks like a pale, ghostly version of its former self. Now comes the most critical stage, the stretching. The wet, pliable skin is laced into a large wooden frame, like a giant embroidery hoop. With a series of pegs, you slowly tighten the laces, pulling the skin from all sides. It must be stretched until it is perfectly, uniformly taut like the head of a drum. This tension is the secret to parchment. As the skin dries on the frame over several days, the very fibers of its structure are realigned, transforming it from a soft, stretchable hide into a stiff, smooth, and beautifully opaque writing surface. Brother Simeon shows you a much smaller frame, holding a piece of skin so fine and thin it is almost translucent. This is for the first page of the Psalms, he says, uterine vellum. The name itself is a mystery, a subject that historians and craftspeople still argue about. Was this legendary, impossibly smooth surface really made from the skin of an unborn calf or lamb? Or was it simply a term for the most perfect, unblemished skin from a very young animal, prepared with the utmost care? You look at its flawless surface, and either explanation seems entirely possible. After a week on the frame, the dried sheet of parchment is cut down, but it is still not ready. The surface, while smooth, is still too slick to hold ink properly. Your final task is to pounce it. You take a small cloth bag filled with powdered pumice stone or bone ash, and you gently dust the surface, rubbing it in a circular motion. You are creating a microscopic tooth, an invisible roughness that will grip the ink from your quill. You are, in effect, exfoliating a sheepskin to get it ready for its holy purpose. At the end of several long, exhausting, and foul-smelling weeks, you have a stack of finished pages. You run your hand over the top sheet. It is no longer a greasy hide. It is cool, smooth, and perfect. It is vellum. You have not written a single sacred word yet, but you have performed a kind of alchemy. You have taken the profane and made it clean. You have taken a piece of a common animal and prepared it to receive the words of God. Your hands are chapped and sore, but you feel a deep, quiet satisfaction. The work has begun. With your stack of clean, creamy parchment prepared, you feel you are finally ready to begin the real work. The next morning, Brother Simeon leads you away from the smelly outbuildings and toward the heart of the monastery's intellectual life. He takes you to a heavy oak door and pushes it open, holding a finger to his lips. You step through and enter a world of profound and disciplined silence. You are now in the scriptorium. The room is long and narrow, with a high-vaulted ceiling. The most striking feature is the series of tall, arched windows that make up the entire north-facing wall. This provides a steady, even, indirect light throughout the day, a light that doesn't cast sharp shadows and is easiest on the eyes. The air smells of old wood, dry dust, and the faint, sweet scent of aging vellum. Down the length of the room are several wooden desks, called carrels, each slanted at an angle. At each desk sits a monk, head bowed, utterly absorbed in his work. The only sound is the faintest whisper of quill nibs scratching across parchment, and the distant cry of a gull from beyond the monastery walls. It feels less like a workshop and more like a temple. Brother Simeon leans in so close his whisper is a breath in your ear. He explains the rules. The first and most absolute rule is silence. No talking, no humming. No muttering to yourself as you work. The act of copying the Word of God is a form of prayer, and it requires absolute, unbroken concentration. A single mistake caused by a moment of distraction is an insult to the sacred text. You realize the scriptorium is the original open-plan office, but with an unbreakably strict no-talking policy that would be the nightmare of any modern extrovert. But how, you wonder, do you ask for anything? Simeon demonstrates. He holds up his hand and makes a motion like he is turning the pages of an invisible book. This, he explains, is the sign for "I need the exemplar," the master copy you will be working from. He then makes a fist and scrapes his index finger across it, mimicking the motion of sharpening a knife. This means you need your penknife. There is a whole vocabulary of these signs, a complex and quirky system of pious charades that allows the scriptorium to function without a single word being spoken. This is a mainstream historical fact of monastic life. These elaborate sign languages were a common solution to the vow of silence. Simeon, you learn, is the armarius, the keeper of the books and the undisputed master of this domain. He is the project manager, the quality controller, and the librarian all rolled into one. He assigns the tasks, he distributes the precious parchment sheet by sheet, and he is the one who will inspect your work. His job is to ensure that the monastery's high standards are maintained. He leads you to an empty carrel at the far end of the room. This will be your world. It is a simple, sturdy desk with a small shelf underneath and a stool. You sit down. The wood is smooth and cool beneath your hands. For the next 17 years, this small space will be the center of your universe. As you sit there, you feel a chill that has nothing to do with the solemnity of the occasion. It is a damp, penetrating cold that seems to radiate up from the stone floor. Even with the great windows, the room is dim. You look at the thick stone walls and realize there is no fireplace. And it is here you confront a reality that historians still argue about. We may imagine these scriptoria as cozy, comfortable spaces, but many, particularly in northern climates like yours, were likely freezing in the winter and damp year-round. The magnificent, perfect books you are here to create will be made not in comfort, but in a constant, low-grade battle against the cold and the gloom. Simeon confirms this when he points to the windows and explains the second great rule. No artificial light, no candles, no oil lamps. The risk of an open flame in a room filled with irreplaceable books and dry parchment is simply too great. A single stray spark could destroy centuries of work. This means your working day is governed entirely by the sun. In the long days of summer, you will work for many hours. But in the dark winter months, your precious time with the page will be short, and the fading light of the afternoon will be your signal to stop. It's a divinely mandated work-life balance. For the rest of that first day, you do not work. You do not get your parchment or your inks. Your task is simply to sit, to watch, and to absorb the silence. You learn the rhythm of the room. You watch a monk across the aisle hold a finished page up to the light, inspecting it for flaws. You see another carefully scraping away an error with the tip of his knife. You attune your ears to the subtle symphony of the scriptorium. The whisper of the turning page, the gentle scrape of the quill, the soft cough of a brother down the row. This is your new life. It is a life of stillness, of patience, of intense and silent focus. The sun begins to set, the light in the room turning a soft gray. Brother Simeon catches your eye and gives a slight nod. The workday is over. You have learned that before you can even think about forming a single letter, you must first master the art of sitting still. After a day spent absorbing the profound silence of the scriptorium, you are now ready to prepare your tools. Your journey continues, but it takes you away from the hallowed quiet of the library and back to the world of pungent smells and messy work. Brother Simeon leads you to a small, cluttered workshop, a place that feels more like an alchemist's laboratory than a room in a holy monastery. Here, he tells you, you will learn to make the lifeblood of your book, the ink. You will not be using a neat, pre-packaged bottle of ink. You must create it yourself, from a collection of strange and seemingly unrelated ingredients. It feels, you think, like you are about to brew a witch's potion rather than something to be used for a sacred text. Simeon lays out the components on a rough wooden table. First, a basket filled with what look like hard, round, woody nuts. These, he explains, are oak galls, strange growths that form on oak trees where a wasp has laid its eggs. They are rich in a substance called tannic acid. Next, he presents a lump of greenish, crystalline rock. This is vitriol, or iron sulfate. Then, a jar of hard, amber-like pellets of gum arabic, a resin from a tree that grows in faraway lands. And finally, a jug of sour, red wine, which makes you wonder if it isn't a terrible waste of good drink. The process begins. Under Simeon's watchful eye, you take a heavy stone mortar and pestle and begin to crush the dry oak galls into a coarse powder. The work is rhythmic and dusty. Once you have a bowl of the powder, you tip it into a large clay pot and pour the sour wine over it, enough to cover it completely. This mixture is then set aside in a warm corner of the workshop for several days to steep and ferment, allowing the wine to draw all the precious tannins out of the galls. As you wait for the galls to steep, Simeon explains that the recipe you are learning is just one of many. This is a subject historians and chemists still argue about. There was no single, universal formula for medieval ink. Each monastery, and often each individual scribe, had their own secret recipe, passed down from master to apprentice. Some used rainwater or vinegar instead of wine. Some added honey to make the ink thicker, or soot from a lamp to make it darker. The recipe you are learning is the specific, time-honored tradition of your abbey, a closely guarded secret. After a week, the wine and oak gall mixture has turned into a dark, foul-smelling sludge. The fermentation is complete. Now you strain the liquid through a piece of cheesecloth, squeezing out every last drop of the dark brown, tannin-rich liquid. The solids are discarded, and you are left with the base of your ink. To this, you add the vitriol, the source of the iron which you have crushed into a fine powder. You stir the mixture, and finally you add the gum arabic, which will act as a binder, helping the ink adhere to the page and preventing it from feathering out into the porous vellum. The ink is now complete. You look into the pot at the brownish, watery liquid, and you feel a surge of disappointment. It doesn't look black at all. It looks weak and unimpressive. Simeon sees the look on your face. He takes a scrap piece of parchment and dips a quill into your freshly made ink. He writes a single word, Deus, God. The letters appear on the page in that same pale brownish gray. Wait, he says simply. This is the quirky, almost magical tidbit about iron gall ink. It is not black when it is first applied. You watch, mesmerized, as the letters on the parchment begin to change. As the iron in the ink reacts with the oxygen in the air, it begins to oxidize. The pale gray slowly, miraculously darkens. Before your eyes, it transforms into a deep, rich, velvety, and permanent black. You realize you will have to work with this faith, writing in a faint color, trusting that the true, dark color will emerge in its own time. But this magic has a dark side. Simeon explains that iron gall ink is acidic. Over the centuries, the very ink that gives the words their form will slowly eat away at the parchment they are written on. He shows you an old book where the letters have burned right through the page, leaving a lace-like pattern of holes. This is why the scribe's skill is so crucial. Applying too much ink in one spot will create a blob that, 500 years from now, could become a hole, erasing the sacred word forever. Your ink is a kind of slow, self-deleting file format. You carefully pour your finished ink into a small, clean horn, which will sit on your desk in the scriptorium. You hold it in your hand. It is no longer a strange collection of galls and rocks and wine. It is a potent, alchemical substance. It is the dark, permanent liquid that you will use to give voice to the Psalms, to give form to the Word of God. Your hands are stained, the workshop still stinks, but you have created the essential element of your 17-year task. You have made your pages from the skin of a sheep. You have made your ink from the galls of an oak tree. Now, standing in the quiet workshop, holding your small horn of black, liquid potential, Brother Simeon informs you that you are still not ready. You have the surface and you have the medium, but you do not have the tool. You need a pen. He does not open a drawer and hand you one. He gestures to a large basket filled with feathers. Your next lesson is to learn how to make your own. He has you sort through the bundle, which contains the long, stiff primary flight feathers from the abbeys geese. He explains that not all feathers are created equal. This is where you learn your first quirky and surprisingly practical tidbit of the scribe's art. For a right-handed scribe, he tells you, the best feathers are the 5 outermost feathers taken from the left wing of a goose. He holds one up to demonstrate. Because of its natural origin, the feather has a gentle curve. A feather from the left wing curves away from a right-handed writer's line of sight, allowing you a clear and unobstructed view of the letters you are forming. A feather from the right wing would curve inward, blocking your view. It is a perfect, simple piece of medieval ergonomics. You select a long, strong feather, its barrel thick and promising, but it is still too soft and greasy to be cut. It must be cured. Simeon leads you to a brazier of hot coals over which sits a pot filled with fine, clean sand. He instructs you to plunge the barrel of the feather deep into the hot sand and hold it there for a few minutes. You can smell the faint, singeing scent of the keratin as the heat drives out the natural oils and hardens the material, making it more brittle and capable of holding a sharp edge. The process is called curing, and as you stand there, you think it feels like you are lightly toasting your office supplies before use. Now comes the part that requires real skill, an art that separates a true scribe from a clumsy novice. You take up your penknife. This is not the knife you used for scraping hides. It is a smaller, much sharper blade, your most important personal tool. Under Simeon's guidance, you begin the delicate surgery. First, you lay the feather on a block of wood and make a long, sloping cut at an angle, removing the very tip of the barrel. This reveals the hollow interior. Then, you turn it over and make a shorter cut on the other side. This creates the basic shape of the nib. You then carefully pare away the sides, tapering the nib to a fine but sturdy point. Your first few attempts are disasters. You apply too much pressure, and the delicate nib cracks. You angle the knife wrong, and the shape is lopsided. Each time, Simeon wordlessly hands you another feather. After you have a point that looks correct, you must perform the most critical step of all. You place the very tip of your newly formed nib on a hard surface, like a piece of horn or glass. Then, with the finest edge of your knife, you press down firmly to create a tiny, vertical slit, running up from the point for just a few millimeters. This slit is the heart of the pen. It is a tiny channel that will draw the ink from the barrel down to the tip. It is the controlled leak that makes writing possible. Make the slit too long, and the ink will blob out. Make it too short or off-center, and the ink will not flow at all. Simeon explains that the final shape of this nib will determine the character of your writing. The broad, straight-cut nib you are learning to make is ideal for the clear, rounded script you'll be using for the main text. But he tells you other scripts require other nibs, sharper points, or nibs cut at an oblique angle. It is a complex science, and historians and calligraphers still argue about the subtle, personal variations master scribes would use to achieve their signature styles. You spend days doing nothing but this. You take flawed or broken feathers and you practice cutting them over and over again. The floor around your stool becomes littered with failed attempts. You learn the feel of the feather, the precise angle of the knife, the exact amount of pressure needed for each cut. You also learn that a quill is not a permanent tool. After writing just a page or two, the delicate point will begin to soften and wear down from the abrasion of the parchment. A scribe must resharpen his quill constantly throughout the day. Your penknife will never be far from your hand. We live in an age of disposable pens, having outsourced this skill to a distant factory. For you, the skill is as fundamental as breathing. Finally, you cut a quill that earns a rare, slight nod of approval from Brother Simeon. The nib is symmetrical, The slit is perfectly centered. You carry it as if it were a holy relic to your desk in the silent scriptorium. You dip it into your horn of iron gall ink. You touch it to a scrap of parchment. The ink flows from the nib in a smooth, crisp, unbroken line. It is perfect. You hold in your hand not just a feather from a goose, but a precision instrument born of patience and skill. You have learned that a scribe is not merely a copier, but a craftsman, intimately connected to the tools of his trade. You are ready. At your carrel in the silent scriptorium, you have everything a scribe could need. In a horn to your right sits the pot of rich, black iron gall ink you so carefully prepared. In your hand you hold the perfectly cut and cured goose quill, its nib sharpened to a fine, crisp edge. Before you lies the stack of creamy, smooth vellum, the result of weeks of foul-smelling, back-breaking labor. The 17-year journey is about to begin with a single word. You reach for the first perfect sheet. Brother Simeon's hand gently rests on your arm, stopping you. His eyes tell you, not yet. There is one more stage of preparation. It is the most painstaking, the most monotonous, and the most invisible of all. Before you can write, you must tame the page. You are about to spend the next several months doing nothing but drawing lines. It's like being told you must spend a year building the scaffolding for a cathedral before you are allowed to lay a single stone. Simeon explains, through his quiet gestures and by pointing to an old, instructional manual, that a blank page is a wilderness, a place of chaos. To honor the Word of God, the writing must have perfect, harmonious order. Every line must be perfectly straight, every letter the same height, the margins perfectly proportioned. This cannot be done by eye alone. You must first create a hidden grid, a scaffold of lines upon which the sacred text will rest. Before you can rule the lines, you must first design the layout of the page. This is not a simple matter of taste. It is a science of proportion, and it's a subject that historians and paleographers still argue about. Did scribes use complex, sacred geometry, basing their page layouts on the golden ratio or the harmonic proportions found in music, creating a page that was mathematically and spiritually perfect? Or did they use simpler, more practical templates passed down through their scriptorium? The layout you are instructed to use is a classic one: 2 columns of text, with generous margins on all sides to leave room for the illumination and decoration that will come much, much later. The physical work begins. You take a small stack of vellum, perhaps 4 or 5 sheets aligned perfectly. Then you take a sharp tool, like an awl, and a compass for measuring. You meticulously work your way down the margins of the top sheet, pricking tiny, almost invisible holes at precise intervals. One set of holes marks the top and bottom of each line of text. Another set marks the vertical boundaries of the columns. The sharp point of the awl passes through the entire stack, so that a single act of pricking prepares several pages at once. You do this for every single one of the hundreds of pages your psalter will contain. It is precise, exacting, and repetitive work. Once all the pages are pricked, the ruling itself begins. You take a single sheet and lay it on a flat board. You take a long straightedge made of polished hardwood. You align it with the first 2 corresponding pinpricks on opposite sides of the page. Now, you take up your ruling tool. You expect it to be a piece of lead or something that will leave a gray mark, but it's not. It is a dry point, a stylus made of silver or lead, but its tip is not sharp. It is smooth and blunt. This is the quirky and ingenious method for creating invisible lines. You press the blunt point of the stylus firmly against the vellum and draw it along the straightedge. It leaves no color, no mark of graphite or ink. Instead, it creates a faint, clean groove or furrow in the surface of the page. On the other side of the sheet, it creates a slightly raised ridge. It is an embossed guideline. You connect all the pinpricks, creating a perfect, shimmering, but almost invisible grid across the entire page. This is your life now, for weeks that blur into months. You sit on your stool from the moment the sun provides enough light until the moment it fades. Prick, rule, page after page. The sheer monotony is a spiritual trial in itself. This is the least glamorous, most mind-numbing part of the scribe's work, the data entry job of the medieval world. Your mind wanders, your back aches, your eyes strain to see the faint lines you have just made. You learn that the discipline of the monastery is not just about prayer and contemplation. It is about the ability to endure this kind of profound, soul-crushing boredom and to find the sacred in the endless repetition of a simple, manual task. Finally, the day comes when the last page is ruled. You have a tall, pristine stack of what, to a casual observer, looks like blank vellum. But you know better. It is not blank. It is a stack of latent order, of hidden potential. You hold a sheet up to the morning light coming through the high window, tilting it back and forth. You can just see the faint, ghostly shimmer of the grid you have so painstakingly created. You have imposed a perfect, rational structure on the wild, organic surface of the animal skin. The scaffolding is complete. Now, and only now, are you finally ready to write. The day has come. You sit at your carrel, a perfect stack of ruled vellum before you. Your ink is dark and waiting in its horn. Your quill, a product of your own newfound skill, feels light and ready in your hand. The weeks and months of smelly, messy, and mind-numbingly tedious preparation are over. All of the invisible work is complete. Now, the visible work, the work that will last for centuries, must begin. Brother Simeon approaches your desk. He moves with a silent reverence. In his hands, he carries the master book, the exemplar you will be copying from. It is an old, respected psalter from the abbey's library. He places it on a wooden stand next to your desk, open to the first page. He looks at you, then at the blank page before you, and gives a single, slow nod. There are no words of encouragement. There is only the silent command to begin. It is time. The silence of the scriptorium, which has become your natural environment, suddenly feels different. It feels heavier, charged with a new significance. The soft scratching of the other quills seems to fade away, and all you can hear is the sound of your own breathing. You look at the first pristine sheet of vellum, the page you spent so long preparing. The fear of the blank page, a terror that haunts writers even in the modern age, is nothing compared to this. Your page is not just blank. It is a precious object, the result of a dead sheep and weeks of labor. A mistake is not just an error, it is a desecration. There is no delete key. There is no undo button. You do not simply start at the top left corner. The book you are creating will be a masterpiece. The very first word of the first psalm, Beatus, blessed, will begin with a magnificent illuminated initial. The letter B will be a work of art in itself, a large, glorious creation that will later be filled with gold leaf and intricate paintings. Your first task is not to write, but to leave the correct amount of space for this future glory. Following the faint marks you made weeks ago, you use your compass and a blunt stylus to lightly impress the boundaries of a large square on the vellum. You are drawing the box for a treasure you cannot yet see. Some scribes, would even use a series of tiny pinpricks to outline the shape of the letter, a ghostly guide for the artist. And who will that artist be? As you stare at the blank space, you wonder. This is a question historians still debate. Was the scribe who wrote the text the same monk who painted the illustrations? Or, in a major project like this, was there a strict division of labor? Was there a master illuminator, a specialist with a finer artistic hand, who would take over after your work with the black ink was done? You don't know. For now, your concern is the humble, perfect black text that will surround that future splendor. Your hand is trembling slightly. You force yourself to take a slow, deep breath, just as you do during the quietest moments of prayer. You pick up your quill. You hunch forward over the slanted desk, adopting the posture of the scribe, a position that would make a modern-day physiotherapist weep. You dip the tip of the quill into the horn of ink. You watch the dark liquid fill the tiny slit in the nib, a perfect, controlled dose. You lift the pen, pausing for a heartbeat, and then you touch it to the page. The point of the quill meets the vellum, right on the invisible guideline you drew so long ago. The feeling is electric. You pull the pen towards you, forming the stem of the first letter. The nib glides across the smooth, prepared surface, leaving behind a trail of pale, grayish ink. You have faith that it will darken to a perfect black. You push the quill away, then across, forming the loops and curves of the letters. Edis ver qui non abiet in concilio impiorum. Blessed is the man who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. You complete the first line. You lift the quill from the page. It is done. The spell is broken. The page is no longer a perfect, terrifying blank. It now bears the word. A wave of relief so profound it almost makes you gasp washes over you. The fear recedes, replaced by a deep, calm, and steady sense of purpose. The journey of 17 years has begun. The mountain you must climb has been broached. You have taken the first step. You look down at the line you have written. It is clean. It is straight. It is good. You dip your quill into the ink once more, your hands steady now. You are ready for the next line. There are only about 250,000 more to go. The first line is on the page. The terror has passed. Now all that is left is the work. You dip your quill, you check your position on the invisible line, and you write the second line. Then the third, then the fourth. The monumental task of 17 years is not a grand charge. It is a slow, deliberate rhythm, a project built from thousands upon thousands of single, patient strokes of a pen. Your life quickly falls into a new, unchangeable pattern, a routine even more rigid than your old one. You wake in the dark for matins, your prayers whispered in the cold chapel. You eat your meager breakfast of bread and weak ale. Then you walk to the scriptorium, your sanctuary and your prison. You sit at your carrel as the morning light fills the high windows, and you begin to write. You work until the light begins to fail in the late afternoon. You attend vespers. You eat your single proper meal of the day in silence. You sleep. And the next day you do it all again. This is your world now. There are no holidays, no weekends, no variation. There is only the steady, unceasing creation of the book. The seasons change outside the high windows of the scriptorium. In the summer, the days are long and glorious. The light is bright and clear, and you can work for many hours. The sounds of the bees in the monastery garden drifting in on the warm air. On these days, progress feels real. You can finish a whole page, sometimes more. You watch the stack of completed pages grow, and you feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. But then comes the winter. The days are short and dark. A bone-deep cold radiates from the stone walls, and the scriptorium becomes a frigid chamber. You work with a heavy cloak wrapped around your shoulders, your breath misting in the air. Your fingers grow stiff and numb, and you have to constantly stop to rub life back into them. The ink thickens in the cold. The precious hours of workable light are few. On many days, you complete only a few lines before the light fades and Brother Simeon signals the end of work. The winter months are a trial of patience, a slow fight for every single word. Years are not marked by birthdays, but by the turning of these seasons, by the slow cycle of fast progress and glacial slowness. The work takes a toll on your body. This is the unromantic, mainstream historical fact of the scribe's life. You develop a permanent ache in your shoulders and lower back from spending 10,000 hours hunched over the slanted desk. It is the scribe's posture, a professional deformity. Your eyes, once sharp, are now constantly strained from focusing on the tiny, intricate letters in the dim, shifting light. They burn and water, and sometimes you have to stop and press the heels of your hands into them just to relieve the pressure. Your right hand is strong, your fingers calloused and permanently stained with the black of the iron gall ink. You must also battle the enemy within, the profound, soul-crushing monotony. How do you stay focused when writing the same style of letter, over and over again for years. Historians and cognitive scientists still argue about the psychological state of a scribe. Was the work a form of deep, transcendental meditation, where the rhythmic repetition brought you into a state of communion with the sacred text? Or was it simply an exercise in immense boredom, a mental ordeal that could only be overcome by sheer force of will? For you, it is both. Some days you enter a state of flow, where your hand moves automatically and the holy words seem to pass through you directly onto the page. On other days, your mind screams with boredom and every letter is a struggle. There is no social media to check, no news to distract you, just you and Psalm 119, which, you note with a sense of dread, is very, very long. To help maintain your standards, you keep a scrap piece of vellum beside you. This is your pen trial sheet. Before you begin each day, and every time you resharpen your quill, you test it on this scrap. You make a few strokes, practice a difficult letter, ensure the ink is flowing correctly. Over the years, this scrap becomes a strange, messy diary, a chaotic jumble of letters, words, and even little doodles you make when your mind wanders. The years pass, 1 year, 5, 10. You are no longer the young novice who accepted this task. You are a man in your 30s now, your face thinner, with lines around your eyes that weren't there before. The abbot who commissioned the work is now bent and frail, his own time running out. The other monks in the scriptorium have changed. Old ones have passed on, new ones have arrived, but you remain. You are the constant. Your task is not yet done. You are halfway through the book of Psalms. The stack of completed pages is now thick and heavy, a satisfying weight when you lift it. The stack of blank, ruled vellum has shrunk. You can see the end, even if it is still years away. You complete another page, holding it up to the light. It is perfect. Another small victory in a long war of attrition against time, boredom, and the cold. After more than a decade at your carrel, the work has become a part of you. You are no longer the nervous novice. You are a master of your craft. Your hand is steady. Your mind is focused. The rhythm of forming the letters, the dip of the quill, the gentle scratch on the vellum, it's as natural to you as breathing. You operate in a state of deep meditative flow, a silent conversation between you, the text, and the page. Days can pass in a blur of focused work, each line a perfect echo of the one before it. You begin to feel infallible, a perfect conduit for the sacred text. And then, one cold Tuesday afternoon, it happens. It is always something small. A brother across the aisle drops his penknife with a clatter that shatters the silence. A sudden gust of wind rattles the window frame. For a fraction of a second, your concentration breaks. Your hand, moving automatically to form the letter M, jerks sideways. The delicate nib of your quill catches on the vellum, and a perfect, black, spidery smear of ink blossoms on the page. It is a tiny, glistening wound of imperfection. You freeze, your breath catches in your throat. A cold dread, sharp and sudden, spreads through your stomach. You stare at the black mark, a hideous stain on a page of otherwise flawless calligraphy. The page is ruined. The entire week of work it represents, the precious, costly sheet of vellum itself, all of it, destroyed by a single, thoughtless moment. This is the scribe's personal apocalypse, the tiny disaster that can undo days of patient labor. There are, levels to this particular hell. A single smeared letter is bad. A misspelled word is worse. But the true, catastrophic sin for a scribe is the error known as I skip. It happens when your tired eyes jump from a word or phrase to a similar one further down the page in the exemplar, causing you to leave out an entire line or even a whole verse of the holy text. Discovering such an error, pages after you have made it, is a truly soul-destroying experience. But your error today is small, contained. You fight back the wave of panic. You remember your training. You will not discard the page. You will attempt a repair. You lay down your quill and pick up your sharpest penknife, the one you use for cutting your nibs. Its edge is like a razor. Holding your breath, you lean close to the page, your nose just inches from the vellum. This is a form of medieval laser surgery, but with a much higher chance of making things worse. This is the mainstream historical fact of scribal correction. You will scrape the error away. Using the very tip of the blade, held almost flat against the surface, you begin to gently abrade the ink. You are not cutting. You are scraping with a touch as light as a feather. Tiny, dusty particles of dried ink and the thinnest possible layer of the vellum surface flake away. You work from the outside of the smear inward, your movements slow and deliberate. The silence of the scriptorium closes in around you again, but now it is the tense silence of a delicate operation. After many long, nerve-wracking minutes, the ink is gone, but the page is not yet healed. The spot where you scraped is now a rough, fluffy patch. The fibers of the vellum have been raised, and if you were to try to write on it now, the ink would bleed and feather, creating an even bigger mess. You must now resurface the page. You set aside your knife and pick up another special tool, a quirky but essential piece of your kit. It is your burnisher. It is a small, perfectly smooth, egg-shaped piece of polished agate, mounted in a wooden handle. Some scribes use a wolf's tooth, believing it works best. You begin to rub the smooth stone firmly over the scraped area, back and forth with steady pressure. The friction and the smoothness of the stone work a kind of magic. The raised, fluffy fibers of the vellum are pressed back down, recompressed, and polished until the surface is once again smooth, glossy, and ready to receive ink. As you work, you contemplate the nature of errors. Historians and codicologists still argue about this. Was it always best to correct a mistake? You have seen old books in the library where small errors were simply left in place, with a series of tiny dots placed beneath the word by the corrector, a subtle sign to the reader to disregard it. Sometimes an aggressive scrape can be misjudged and turn into a hole, a far worse fate for a page than a single wrong letter. You have to make a choice, and the risk is always yours. Finally, the repair is done. You run your finger over the spot. It is smooth. If you hold the page up to the light, you can see a slight thinness, a ghostly trace of the trauma the page endured. But to the reader, it will be virtually invisible. You have faced the scribe's nightmare, and you have, through patience and skill, prevailed. With a newfound sense of humility, you pick up your quill, dip it in the ink, and prepare to write the word again, correctly this time. You have learned that the long road to perfection is not about being infallible, but about knowing how to mend what is broken. After 15 years, it is done. You write the final Amen at the end of the final psalm. You lean back from your carol, your body aching, your eyes burning, but your spirit soaring. For more than a decade, you have lived inside this text. The black ink on the cream-colored vellum has been your entire world. The book is complete. It is a perfect, unified, monumental work of calligraphy. You feel a sense of completion, so profound it is almost overwhelming. The next day, Brother Simeon inspects your work, turning the last page. He gives a slow, satisfied nod. Then he looks at you and says, without a trace of irony, "Good. The first half of the work is done." Before you can process this spirit-crushing statement, he leads you out of the scriptorium, back to the workshop. It is time, he explains, to give the book its soul. It is time to add the color. Your world is about to transform from black and white into glorious, brilliant technicolor. Simeon walks to a large, iron-bound chest in the corner of the room, a chest you have never seen opened. He unlocks it with a heavy key. As he lifts the lid, you gasp. The chest is filled with dull-looking rocks, dried plants, and strange lumps of earth. It looks like a geologist's junk drawer, but you know it is a treasure chest containing the raw materials of beauty sourced from all over the known world. He begins your lesson. He hands you a small, dark blue rock, no bigger than your thumb. It is flecked with what looks like gold dust. This, he says with a reverence you have never heard in his voice before, is lapis lazuli. It comes from the mountains of the east, a journey of thousands of miles. This is the source of the pigment ultramarine, a blue so deep and vibrant it seems to glow. This, you learn, is a quirky but essential fact of the illuminator's art. This single pigment is more expensive than its weight in pure gold. Spilling even a tiny amount would be a greater sin than misspelling a dozen words. This color is reserved for only the most sacred of images, primarily the robes of the Virgin Mary. Your new job is to take these raw, hard materials and transform them into a powder fine enough to be used as paint. Simeon shows you the tools: a thick, flat slab of polished porphyry stone, and a muller, a pestle with a flat bottom that fits perfectly in your palm. You take a small chip of the precious lapis lazuli and break it into smaller pieces with a hammer. Then, you place the pieces on the slab and begin to grind. It is another slow, repetitive, circular motion, a rhythm that you will come to know intimately over the next year. You grind and grind, the stone scraping against the slab, until the hard mineral is reduced to a powder as fine as silk. You move on to the other colors, a tour of the medieval palette. You grind earthy red ochre, dug from the abbey's own lands, to make a deep blood red. You are shown how to make a bright, vibrant green called verdigris by sealing a plate of copper in a pot with vinegar until a brilliant green crust forms on the metal. The toxic, acidic smell makes your eyes water. You learn that a bright yellow can be made by grinding the dried flowers of the weld plant. For white, you will use lead shavings, another substance Simeon warns you is poisonous. You are working in a beautiful but surprisingly hazardous environment. But this fine, colored dust is not yet paint. It needs a binder to make it stick to the page. This is the mainstream fact of medieval painting. The creation of egg tempera. Simeon shows you how to crack a fresh egg from the henhouse, carefully separating the yolk from the white. You cradle the perfect, trembling yolk in your hand, pass it back and forth to dry the membrane, and then you pierce the sack with a pin, letting the pure, sticky yolk run out into a small seashell. You mix this golden liquid with a little water and sometimes a drop of honey. This is your medium, the glue that will turn dust into paint. And as with everything, there are secrets and variations. Historians and art conservators still argue about the precise recipes for these binders. Did they always use yolk? Or for some colors, did they use glare, egg white beaten to a froth, for a more transparent, glossy finish? Did they ever use fish glue, or even earwax to achieve a specific texture? The binder was as much a part of the secret art as the pigment itself. After weeks of grinding and mixing, you have your palette. It is not on a wooden board, but in a series of clean seashells or small earthenware pots. A pot of heavenly blue, a pot of earthy red, a pot of vibrant green, a pot of brilliant yellow. You have transformed rocks, plants, and metals into a rainbow of liquid light. For 15 years, you have lived in a world of black and white. Now, your cell will be filled with color. The soul of the book, its holy text, is complete. You are now ready to give it a body, a form so beautiful it will draw the viewer into a state of prayer before they have even read a single word. Section 11. With your small seashell pots of vibrant, jewel-like paints all mixed and waiting, you feel the thrill of the artist about to begin. You have the text, you have the colors, but Brother Simeon holds up a hand. There is one final element to add, an element that comes before all the other colors. Before you can add the colors of the earth, you must first add the light of heaven. He leads you back to the locked chest of treasures, but this time he removes a much smaller, flatter, and heavier box. He opens it to reveal not rocks or plants, but a small book. Its pages are not vellum, but thin tissue paper, and interleaved between them are sheets of pure, shimmering gold. This is gold leaf, the most precious of all the illuminator's materials. It is real gold, hammered by patient artisans, until it is 1,000 times thinner than a sheet of your vellum. It is so impossibly thin that it is translucent, so light that a stray cough or a sudden draft can send it fluttering away into a cloud of dust. A sneeze in this workshop would not just be a breach of etiquette. It would be a small-scale financial disaster. You are about to learn how to handle this solid, captured light and bind it to the page. Simeon teaches you the first and most magnificent technique, raised gilding. This is for the most important parts of the illumination, the halos of the saints, or the great initial letters that begin each psalm. The first step is to create the cushion on which the gold will rest. You learn to make gesso, a thick, plaster-like paste. The recipe for this is another closely guarded secret, and art historians and conservators still debate the exact ingredients. The mixture of fine plaster, lead white, and a sticky binder like fish glue or rabbit skin glue had to be perfect. Too hard, and it would crack when the vellum flexed. Too soft, and it wouldn't take a good polish. You carefully paint this thick, pinkish gesso onto the page, building it up within the blank spaces you left all those years ago. You create a smooth, raised, three-dimensional shape on the flat surface of the page. You let this dry completely until it is hard and smooth. Now comes the magical part. You must make the surface of the gesso sticky again, but only for a moment. You lean in close, your face just inches from the page, and you huff your warm, moist breath onto the gesso. This brief puff of humidity is just enough to reactivate the glue on the very surface, making it perfectly tacky for a few seconds. It is, you think, the most critical use of bad breath in the entire history of art. You must move quickly. You take your gilder's tip, a special, wide, flat brush made from the softest squirrel hair. This is the quirky, ingenious tool for handling this impossible material. You brush the tip against your own hair or your woolen robe, building up a tiny charge of static electricity. You bring the charged brush near a sheet of gold leaf. The delicate sheet leaps up and clings to the brush. With a hand that you force to be perfectly steady, you move the brush over to the page and gently lay the gold leaf down onto the tacky gesso. The gold instantly adheres. You press it down softly with a bit of cotton. After it is set for a moment, you brush away the excess, the tiny, fluttering flakes of gold called skewings. Then you take up your burnisher, the same polished agate stone you used to smooth the vellum, and you begin to rub the gold. At first, the surface is matte and soft, but as you polish it with firm, steady strokes, a miracle occurs. The dull surface transforms into a brilliant, solid, mirror-like shine. It no longer looks like thin leaf. It looks like a solid piece of pure, gleaming gold has somehow grown out of the page. It is a divine mirror, trapping the light of the room and reflecting it back at you. You also learn the second technique, flat gilding, for smaller details or for creating patterned backgrounds. For this, you don't use the thick gesso. Instead, you paint a thin layer of a slow-drying adhesive, like glare, the beaten egg white, or a sticky juice pressed from garlic onto the page. You then lay the gold leaf onto this adhesive. The result is not raised, but it is a flat, shimmering field of light, a different but equally beautiful effect. The work is more nerve-wracking than writing ever was. The materials are incredibly expensive, and the process is utterly unforgiving. A single tremor of the hand as you lay the leaf can create a wrinkle that can never be removed. A moment's hesitation with your breath can mean the gesso is no longer tacky. It requires a new level of patience and focus. At the end of many weeks, you look at the first few pages of your psalter. The black text is there, solid and serene. But now, rising from the page, the great initial B of Beatus verse shines with a light that seems to come from within. It is not paint, it is not a color. It is light itself, captured and bound to the vellum. You have learned how to imbue the page with a holy radiance, preparing it for the final glory of color that will soon surround this divine, shining metal. Word count 1099. Awaiting continue. A continue. H I letter 1 EC7, NT I letter 1 EBF. entrin to die. Section 12. The page before you is a thing of stark and holy beauty. The black, serene text provides the soul. The burnished, gleaming gold provides the divine light. Now, you must give it a body. You must clothe the word in the glorious colors of creation. You take your seat at the carol, but today you put aside the quills and the inkhorn. Instead, you arrange a series of small seashells on your desk, each containing a tiny, brilliant puddle of egg tempera paint you so carefully ground and mixed. The final stage of your 17-year journey is beginning. Your tools for this work are different. They are not the sturdy, practical quills you have come to know so well. You unroll a small leather pouch to reveal your brushes. They are impossibly fine and delicate. The best ones, used for the tiniest details, are made from just a few hairs from the tip of a squirrel's tail, carefully inserted into the end of a feather shaft. It is a highly specialized piece of equipment, you reflect, likely sourced from a very surprised-looking squirrel. Holding one of these brushes feels entirely different from holding a pen. This is the tool of the artist. Your first task is the most important illumination in the entire book, the great historiated initial that begins the first psalm. A historiated initial is a mainstream feature of the finest manuscripts. It's a large letter that contains a miniature painting, a scene that tells a story related to the text. Inside the glorious golden letter B for Beatus Ver, you will paint an image of the author of the Psalms himself, King David, seated on his throne and playing his harp. Before you touch paint to the page, you must first create the underdrawing. With a metal point stylus, you lightly and carefully sketch the composition within the blank space inside the letter. You draw the shape of the throne, the curve of the harp, the outline of the king's robes and his face. It is a faint, ghostly guide that will soon be covered in color. Then you begin to paint, but the work is not random. You have a strict, methodical process, a quirky tidbit of the illuminator's craft designed for efficiency and perfection. You don't paint one whole object at a time. Instead, you apply one color at a time to the entire page. Today you will begin with the blue. You will paint every area that requires blue, King David's robes, a piece of drapery, a small patch of sky, before cleaning your brush and moving on to the next color tomorrow. You dip your finest brush into the seashell containing the precious ultramarine, the blue more valuable than gold. You begin to fill in the shape of King David's robe. Painting with egg tempera is the opposite of the free-flowing finger painting of a child. The paint is thin and dries almost instantly. You cannot blend it on the page. Instead, you must build up the color and shadows through the painstaking application of dozens, even hundreds, of tiny, individual brush strokes. You create shadows by cross-hatching, laying down a series of fine parallel lines. You create highlights by adding a touch of lead white to the pigment for a lighter shade. It is slow, meticulous, exacting work. As you paint the tiny, expressive face of the king, no bigger than your thumbnail, you have to make artistic choices. How will you render his expression? Will it be one of pious contemplation or of joyful music-making? This is a question that art historians still debate. What was the level of artistic freedom an illuminator like you actually had? Were you required to slavishly copy a design from an approved pattern book, ensuring uniformity and theological correctness? Or were you allowed to innovate, to imbue these tiny figures with your own unique style and interpretation? You give King David a gentle, serene smile. Hours pass. The only sound is your own soft breathing. You are hunched over, your focus narrowed to a tiny patch of vellum, a space no bigger than a coin. This is high-stakes, high-resolution work on an organic, non-replaceable monitor. Finally, the painting is complete. You lean back, your shoulders screaming with tension, and look at your work. Within the gleaming gold of the letter B, King David sits on his throne, his fingers plucking the strings of his harp. His robes are a shade of blue so deep and pure it seems to contain the sky itself. The red of the throne cushion is rich and warm, and the green of the tiled floor provides a perfect contrast. The black text of the psalm now flows from a vibrant, living image. The page is no longer just a carrier of words. It is a window into the world of the sacred. You have learned that the illuminator is not just a decorator. The illuminator is a preacher, using the silent language of color and image to bring the holy text to life for the reader, who may not even have the skill to read the words you so carefully copied. You have given the word a face. The main illumination is complete. The historiated initial glows with the light of gold and the jewel-like tones of your paint. The page is a masterpiece of sacred art, but your work on this page is not yet finished. Now your eyes turn to the vast, empty spaces you so carefully measured and ruled all those years ago, the margins. This pristine, creamy white space surrounding the holy text is not to be left empty. It is a canvas in its own right, a place where order and chaos, piety and playfulness can exist side by side. First, you add the formal framework. From the corners of the great golden initial, you begin to paint delicate, vine-like tendrils. They creep up and down the margins, sprouting intricate leaves of ivy and acanthus, punctuated by small, brilliant flowers. This is the beautiful, orderly cage that will contain the text, a border of stylized nature that frames the sacred word of God. This work is precise, controlled, and elegant. But once this formal border is in place, you are allowed a freedom you have not known at any other stage of this long project. In the main text, you were a copier, bound by the exemplar. In the historiated initials, you were an artist, but one bound by the strict rules of religious iconography. But here, in the wide open spaces of the lower margin, you can be an inventor. This is the mainstream historical fact of the Gothic manuscript. The margins are alive with playful, bizarre, and often inexplicable drawings known as drolleries or grotesques. This is the doodling in your notebook part of the job. But what do these strange little pictures mean? This is a question that art historians and medievalists still fiercely debate. Are they simple, mindless doodles born of a scribe's boredom during his long, repetitive task? Are they mnemonic devices, strange pictures designed to jog the reader's memory about the content of that specific page? Or are they something more complex, a hidden world of social satire, a place to make fun of pompous bishops or lustful knights in a way that would be unthinkable in the main text? You, the artist, know only that it is a space where your own imagination is finally unleashed. You dip your brush in a pot of brown ink, and in the space at the bottom of the page, you begin to draw. You paint a monkey dressed in the robes of a doctor, seriously holding up a flask of urine to inspect its color. On the next page, you paint a goose, a rosary clutched in its beak, looking to the heavens with an expression of intense prayer. Then you paint one of the most famous and baffling images from the world of marginalia, a knight in full plate armor, with his sword drawn and his shield raised, engaged in a desperate, mortal combat with a giant snail. It is a very slow, very chivalrous battle. Then you turn to one of the most persistent and quirky of all marginalia tropes, the killer rabbit. For centuries, rabbits in manuscripts were timid creatures, symbols of innocence or lust. But in your time, the world has been turned upside down. In the bottom margin, you paint a rabbit, but this creature is standing on its hind legs. It has stolen a hunter's bow and quiver, and it is coolly, expertly aiming an arrow at a cowering man in nobleman's clothes. On another page, you paint a rabbit wielding a battle axe, and another roasting a human over a spit. It is a strange, darkly humorous rebellion of the hunted against the hunter. Your imagination, freed from the constraints of the sacred, runs wild. You create grotesques, the bizarre hybrid creatures that seem to come from a medieval Photoshop experiment gone wonderfully wrong. You paint a man with the head of a dog playing the bagpipes. You paint a creature with the crowned head of a king, the body of a fox, and the webbed feet of a duck. You paint a scaly monster with the head of a bishop, its mitre slightly askew. These strange beings chase each other, fight, and play musical instruments all along the bottom edge of the page, completely ignored by the serene, holy text just a few inches above them. You have created a strange duality on the page. In the center, there is the perfect, unchanging, eternal Word of God. Around the edges, there is a world of chaos, violence, parody, and nonsense. It is a reflection of life itself, the sacred soul surrounded by the messy, profane, and often ridiculous reality of the world. It's not blasphemy. It's a necessary acknowledgement that both worlds exist. And you, the scribe, are the bridge between them. You have left a secret part of yourself, your sense of humor and your strange imagination, hidden in plain sight for a future reader, centuries from now, to discover and wonder at. You paint the final, tiny flourish on the final grotesque in the margin of the final psalm. You lay down your brush. A deep, profound stillness settles over you. 17 years have passed since you first sat at this carol. The young, nervous monk who was given this commission is gone, replaced by a middle-aged man with a permanent ache in his back and eyes that are quick to water. The hair at your temples is now gray. You look at the massive, completed stack of illuminated pages, hundreds of sheets of vellum, each one a testament to a small piece of your life. With a reverence that feels like the culmination of your entire existence, you carry the stack to the abbot. He is ancient now, his hands trembling with age, but his eyes shine as he looks upon the finished work. "It is beautiful, Brother Thomas," he whispers. "Now, let us make it a book." The precious pages, the work of your entire adult life, are taken from you and brought to yet another workshop, one you have never entered before. This is the bindery. Here another specialist monk presides, a man with strong, thick fingers and an air of quiet carpentry. He is the binder. His job is to take your stack of loose, magnificent pages and give them a single, unified, and permanent body. The first step is the folding. You watch the binder take your large, flat sheets, each one containing 4 pages of your work, 2 on the front and 2 on the back. He lays a sheet on his table, and with a tool made of polished bone, he crisply folds it in half, then in half again, creating a small booklet of 8 pages. This booklet is a gathering, or a choir. He does this for every single sheet, his movements economical and precise, a skill honed over decades. He then arranges these gatherings in their correct order, from the first psalm to the last. Next, the gatherings are placed into a large, sturdy sewing frame. It's a wooden device that holds the stack of gatherings tightly together, with the folded spines facing upward. The binder takes a sharp awl, and with a series of quick, firm movements, he pierces a set of holes through the crease of each gathering, ensuring they align perfectly from one to the next. He loops the thread around a series of thick leather thongs stretched vertically on the frame. He is sewing the gatherings not just to each other, but to these strong leather supports, creating a single, flexible, and incredibly durable text block. This is the strong, beating heart of the book. At the top and bottom of the spine, where the pages are most vulnerable, the binder adds a final, thoughtful touch. This is the quirky and beautiful craft of sewing the end bands. With fine linen thread, often dyed bright red or blue, he meticulously loops and knots the thread around the ends of the gatherings and a small leather core. This isn't just for decoration, though it looks beautiful. It reinforces the book's structure, a small detail that ensures a long life. The sewn text block is now removed from the frame. The binder then takes 2 thick boards of solid oak, which have been cut to the perfect size and sanded smooth. He chisels channels and holes into the edges of the boards. He then painstakingly threads the leather thongs from the spine of the text block into these channels, lacing the pages securely to their new wooden covers. The book now has a skeleton and a body. As you watch this master at work, You wonder about his place in the world. Is a binder of this skill always part of the monastery? Historians and book conservators still argue about this. For a project of this importance and expense, would the precious, unbound pages sometimes be sent under guard to a famous lay craftsman in a city like York or London, a man renowned for his magnificent bindings? It's hard to imagine letting your life's work out of the abbey walls. Finally, the binder covers the oak boards with a large piece of fine calfskin leather, dyed a deep brown. He soaks the leather first to make it pliable, stretching it carefully over the boards and folding the edges neatly on the inside. Using heated metal tools with decorative patterns, he might press a blind-tooled design into the damp leather, giving it a texture that is both beautiful to the eye and pleasant to the touch. The book is now clothed. The finished volume is placed in a large, heavy book press, which is screwed down tightly. It will remain here for days, allowing the wood, glue, and leather to dry slowly and form a single, inseparable object. When it is finally removed, it is no longer a stack of your pages. It is a book. It has a weight, a heft, a permanence that the loose sheets never possessed. The binder adds 2 brass clasps to the front edge, designed to hold the book tightly shut against the humidity that can make vellum swell and buckle. He polishes the leather one last time, and then he turns and hands it to you. It is the work of your entire adult life, now made whole. The 17-year journey of creation is at last complete. You take the finished book in your hands. The weight of it surprises you. It is not just the physical weight of the oak boards, the animal skin, and the leather. It is the weight of 17 years. You run your hand over the cool, textured leather of the cover. You touch the cold brass of the clasps that hold it shut. This object contains your youth, your eyesight, your aching back, your moments of transcendent focus, and your moments of soul-crushing boredom. It is a portable cathedral, and you are its architect. You unhook the clasps, a kind of medieval 2-factor authentication to protect the precious data within, and open the cover. The first page with its magnificent golden bee gleams up at you. The colors you painted seem even more vibrant now, set against the dark brown of the binding. You turn a few pages, the vellum making a soft, rustling sound. The pages are stiff and perfect. You see your own handwriting, the steady black script that became the rhythm of your life. You see the killer rabbit you doodled in the margin of Psalm 52, a tiny, secret joke, and you smile. Brother Simeon and the aged abbot look on as you have your final moment with your creation. You know this book is not for you. You will likely never read from it again. It will be presented to the family of the patron who funded it, or perhaps it will be kept in the abbey's treasury, a showpiece to impress important visitors. It is a strange thought. For 17 years, this book was your entire world. Now its life in the wider world is just beginning, and you will not be part of it. You might see the binder working on a smaller book for a traveling priest, a girdle book with a long tail of leather so it can be tucked into a belt. Your book is not for travel. It is a destination in itself. This finished object in your hands brings up a question that librarians and philosophers still argue about. What exactly is a book? Is it the text itself, the unchanging words of the Psalms that existed long before you and will exist long after? Or is it this specific physical object, this unique combination of wood, animal, metal, and color, this product of your own irreplaceable time and labor? You close the cover gently. You decide that somehow it is both. The immortal soul of the text has been given a unique mortal body, and you were the one chosen to unite them. You hand the book to the abbot. Your work is done. Your great commission is fulfilled. You are no longer the scribe of the Psalter. You are just Brother Thomas again. Tomorrow you will be assigned a new task. Perhaps you will work in the infirmary or the kitchens. Perhaps, if you are lucky, you will be asked to start another book, though surely not one so grand as this. You have created a vessel that will carry your work, your spirit, across centuries you cannot even imagine. It will be opened by hands that are not yet born, its colors marveled at by eyes that will see a world you could never comprehend. The book will outlive you. That is its purpose. That is your legacy. That is your peace. And now your own day is over. The light has faded from the high window of the scriptorium. The work is complete. The great book is closed and clasped, its stories and secrets held safely within. The silence that surrounds you now is not the tense silence of concentration, but the deep, soft, and peaceful silence of a task fulfilled. You can let the memory of the quill's gentle scratching fade away. You can release the image of the gleaming gold and the jewel-like colors. The scent of ink and old vellum dissolves into the quiet darkness of your own comfortable room. There are no more pages to rule, no more letters to form. Your long and patient labor has earned you this time of rest. Let the story of the book become a gentle, distant dream, a quiet hum in the background of your mind as you drift and float and fall into a deep and well-deserved sleep.